As the world celebrates love, the timing for courtship that leads to marital bliss seems to be changing greatly. According to a UN study, women are delaying marriage up to 5 years, even in Africa. Greater access to education, financial stability, in many cases, the shifting gender roles are the cause, to name a few. On today's episode, we take a look at the growing global trend of women delaying matrimony by taking care of other life's demand and responsibilities before settling down. We would look at also the reasons others maintain that being in a marriage is an important and a safe place that women should value and aspire to be. Welcome to the conversation. I am Orion Itangishaka. With me is my co-host Ayan Bior. Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick is out today, so joining us at the table is Medina Maishanu from VoA's House of Service. Our guest today is Sarah Adeyinka Skold, a doctoral candidate at the University of Pennsylvania. She currently writes and lectures about marriage patterns of Black women around the world. Sarah, we are so glad to have you.
Welcome to you both.
Thank you for having us.
Well, let's start the conversation in South Africa. It's a country that has been experiencing a rise in the marriage age for women, with 32 being the median age for first-timers, up from 30 5 years ago. It's part of a global trend in developed nations where women's educational attainment and incomes are rising, along with the age of the average bride. VoA's Anita Powell meets with Johannesburg's growing ranks of women who say that they're not against the institution of marriage, but won't settle for less just to settle down.
Around the world, women are delaying their trip down the aisle, including in South Africa, where the median age of a bride is 32 and rising. 33-year-old online content creator Samina Anwari plans to wed in December and was surprised at reactions when she broke the news.
I've graduated and I've gotten jobs, I've gotten all these things, but like when I told people I was getting married, that is the most excited I've ever seen them. Well, I actually burst out laughing when they got like that excited, because I was like, but I haven't really achieved anything.
For South Africa's young professional women, like 32-year-old Luendo Hamukoma, marriage is not a top priority. Her parents, however, have been married for more than 3 decades.
You get married, you finish school, you get married, you have kids. This is a successful life. I, on the other hand, completely different life. Go to school, figure out, find a job that, can pay you a living wage or that kind of stuff, and then just kind of start figuring out how to be a good version of yourself. Marriage was not on the cards.
Psychologist Sinkmobile Olivia Aderanoi, who specializes in couples therapy, sees more indifference to marriage.
I'm seeing a lot of Brad Pitts and Angelina Jolie's. Basically, we just prefer living together, starting a family if we want to. If we don't want to, it's okay as well.
The price comparison website Priceonomics crunched global marriage data and found one clear correlation. The higher the country's income, the later the age of marriage. Hamukoma's younger sister Chipo, an economist who is also not married, says she's seen similar data in southern Africa.
Also, as an economist, the statistics for married women, that your health goes down, your pay goes down, your stress goes up, your unhappiness goes up. Empirically, there doesn't seem to be much of a case, because single women are statistically happier and wealthier. So it's it has to be a really good marriage.
Engaged content creator Anwari, who plans to keep her surname, says that's how many of her peers see it. Marriage is no longer the goal. Happiness is. Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
Well, Sarah, let's get going with this conversation. I'm eager to know, we know that the research is out there. Women are taking a little longer to go down the aisle. But does the research mean that women are no longer interested in marriage, or do they still value it and also have more choices in whether they want it and when?
Yeah, so I would actually say that at least amongst college-educated women, they definitely still value marriage. Actually, women of all socioeconomic backgrounds actually still value marriage. Marriage is still an important institution to people, but what women are doing is that they're expanding their horizons, right? So marriage is not the only option that's available to them, and I think it's great that women are seeing themselves in different roles, mothers, wives. They can do that, but they can also be engineers, teachers, professors, and they're able to achieve that. And if that means delaying marriage to do something that's fulfilling to them, then I'm glad to see them taking that. But I don't think that it means that they're against marriage. I just think that they have different priorities and they can which is great.
Even in the rural areas as well?
So I think with the rural areas, it might be different because if women don't have the opportunities to pursue further education, then marriage might be the only option. So I think this is why it's important to continue to introduce women and girls to education so that they can be fully empowered for themselves.
Let's go back to the urban area. If you think about it, in some parts of the world, women get married for independence, security, money, and being able to have a career. But if you can have that and achieve that on your own, then why should you get married in the first place?
And I don't think you should or that you have to. So I think what women are recognizing is that marriage is a choice for them.
Yeah.
And we have, as Ayan said, we have lots of rights and we have lots of opportunities that we didn't in the past.
Right.
So now if we can do it, why not take the chance to do so?
Yeah. But Sarah, can we actually have it all? Because I feel like this is one of the issues that every woman has to grapple with.
Yeah.
Our moms had to choose between work and marriage, but we don't have to choose. But is it actually practical to get everything that we want? The husband and the job and the nice kids and everything?
So my answer to that would be, given the way that the society is set up now, absolutely not, because the structure is not set up for women to have it all. Women are still having to choose, right? So we're having this conversation because maybe somewhere people think that, oh, there's a crisis of marriage because women aren't getting married. But women can't get married to themselves. What are men doing?
Yeah.
Are men also not getting married, right? Men might be delaying as well. So I think it's not a question of just, can women have it all? Can we support women into having it all? And I don't think we have that structure right now.
Most of us don't want to think about marriage. We don't want to think about relationships. These are issues that keep some of us up at night. But you have decided to study this. Why did you decide to study this area and become an expert in this area?
So for me, when I was in college, I noticed that all of my Black female friends, they weren't hooking up and they were not dating. So I was like,
What was their focus?
they were studying like everyone was studying, but they weren't getting asked out, right? So like I went to a primarily white institution and I noticed that the white women were getting asked out, they were hooking up, but Black women weren't. And I always thought, well, I'm gonna go to college and get married. So it became very clear very fast that was not going to happen. So I was my question was why, right? So we're here at college doing the same thing that white women are doing. We're earning the same degrees. We're just as smart as they are. What is it about us that is not appealing?
But in rural Africa, and I want to bring it to you in northern Nigeria, where you're from originally, how is the dynamic when it comes to marriage, right, in this day and age?
In the northern part of Nigeria, it's not like you actually have a choice. It's something that is, you grow up and you know that once you reach a certain age, you just have to get married. It's just part of you. They make you feel that it's part of you. And even if you reach a certain level in your career and you're successful, people will still find a way to tie you down and to make you feel that you haven't gotten it on. You have not attained because you haven't gotten married. So.
Is that religiously or mostly culturally?
Culturally, it's not only religious. For the most part, it's religiously, but it's
also the culture.
It is mostly the culture. And then when we talk about women that don't get married, for example, where I come from in the northern part of Nigeria, people make you feel like you need to have a big wedding. So people marry for the wrong reasons. And a lot of women would find men that actually care about them, but they won't get married because, oh, maybe he's not rich enough, or maybe he can't give me a big wedding. So these are things that some women suffer from, especially from where I come from.
But isn't that like a pretty legit concern? I mean, maybe not with the wedding, but isn't it a legit concern to want a man who can provide for you?
No, there's a difference.
There is a difference.
They make you feel like you need to marry a rich man. You can marry someone that's average and he can provide for you. But marrying a rich man is not something that has to be a must. But they make you feel like, oh, you have to marry a rich man because you will be able to come out and boast about it. And you get what I mean?
The families.
That's...
I also would like to add that I don't think that it's just northern Nigeria. I think women, Black women in particular, we do face these pressure issues, they're class issues. I think Black educated women were often seen as being too picky if we're not marrying someone who has the same education as us. And there's this idea, I think women still feel the pressure. So there are two things happening at once. You can be independent, you can prioritize your career, but are you going to get married? There's still that pressure. So I think that society is still saying,
I
women
want
have
to
to
plug
get
in
married.
something. What about the idea that there's not enough black men for black women? Can we tap into that just briefly?
Yes. So I think that is true, but it's structural. I don't think this is an issue of, well, black women are picky, black women don't want black men. I do think we have to talk about racism, and we have to talk about those kinds of things, and we have to talk about colonialism, and are men able to have the jobs that they had in the past? Are they able to? We have to talk about mass incarceration. So these things are all true, but I think people tend to focus on that, and they tend to focus on black women as being agents of their own destinies, but choosing not to use that agency when there are these structural issues that constrain their choices.
That was very interesting. And of course, I'm sure you have a lot to add to this discussion. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is @VOA Our Voices. And send us WhatsApp messages. The number is on your screen.
Being part of Our Voices is about more than just sitting here and talking about women's issues. It's about listening to them.
And bringing their opinions to the table and making sure their voices are heard.
Because our lived experiences, our stories, and our voices will help shape the next generation.
Why do you look at me this way, oh daddy? Oh daddy. What is it that you wanna say, oh shitty? Oh shitty. Yeah, God put you my way, and that I know for sure. Just say the word and I say yes. Just get down on one knee. Legalize somebody.
Welcome back, you with Our Voices. Still with us on set is Miss Sarah Adiyinka-Skold of the University of Pennsylvania. Thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you.
Despite the recent global trends for ladies to delay walking down the aisle, for others, the quest for marriage is still very much a priority as long as love is part of the equation. VOA Anasthasie Tudieshe reports from the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Noela Lubunda is a role model for young female graphic designers in DRC. Her career took off after she won a big national contest while still a student. The 24-year-old says she is determined to make her mark in an industry where women are scarce.
I lost my father when I was 12. Our mom raised us to believe that only we could look after ourselves, and we don't have any family here in Kinshasa, so.
One might expect that for such a career-focused young professional, getting married and starting a family would be less of a priority. Not for her.
Marriage to me is something extraordinary. Having someone who's going to support me will give me the boost to go very far in whatever I want to achieve. A career is a wonderful thing, but don't forget that marriage is also very important for a woman, especially as an African American woman. We are raised with these values. It is in us.
Therapist Jean Lumbala has been working as a marriage and relationship counselor for more than 20 years. While he has seen some changes in the way young people today approach marriage, to him, successful women like Noela are still the norm.
I think for a lot of women, marriage is a place to build a beautiful home, to have children, because it's part of the system. And this way of thinking is all over the board. One of the reasons is that you women have a biological clock.
Yes, ladies. Here in Kinshasa, being young, educated, and independent does not necessarily mean fulfilled. Education, religion, society have a very strong power over women's lives and choices. However, there are nuances to the eagerness to put a ring on it.
I see myself speaking at TEDx, talking about my life, motivating people. I see myself doing big conferences, big trips, but not.
Mira Dunoyer says growing up without her father and on and off with her mother certainly have influenced her views on being someone's spouse.
I think if I wasn't a Christian, I wouldn't support marriage. And what makes me angry is the fact that the children arrive at a certain time and I stay with my husband for my children. I wouldn't want to live my life for them. I wouldn't want to stay in a place that doesn't make me happy anymore. What are the advantages of marriage? Children? I don't know.
While the appetite for marriage is still strong among many young Congolese women, Jean Lumbala says the dynamic is evolving.
The difference is that marriage isn't necessarily for life. I think there's a critical spirit nowadays. Women today can be critical of marriage.
Whether they believe, like Noella, that marriage has to be part of a woman's life plan, or like Mira Dunoyer, that tying the knot can be a daunting task, marriage for most young Congolese women comes with one big difference from their grandmother's generation. Their happiness within that marriage must be part of the equation.
Okay, so ladies, I think that the most illuminating part of the story that we just saw is when Dr. Lumbala said, women today can be critical of marriage. They question it, they assess it. And it made me think of our two characters, Noella and Myra, who are on two completely different ends of the spectrum. I have to be completely honest with you. I see myself in both of them. Noella is a 24-year-old who is very ambitious. When I was 24, I was the same. I literally moved halfway across the country to pursue my career. But I have to agree with Myra. I mean, marriage is not a small thing. It's not a small decision. Marriage is not the wedding day. It's a whole process that takes till death do you part. And so I totally understand where she's coming from when she's, kind of afraid of jumping into marriage and questioning, whether it will work out for her.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that what's really great is that we get to see both sides of the coin, right? And as you mentioned, both of those things are in women today. They're balancing, figuring out which one am I going to be. But I also think that it's nice that they get to decide, right? So Noella can say she wants marriage, she wants to pursue that, and the other woman can say that
Is it normal for one singular woman to want to get married but also be afraid of it? Is that normal?
I think so.
I hope so.
Marriage is I think marriage is growth. Marriage is something that you cannot be ready for. So it's actually normal. I think it's actually normal to be afraid of it.
I agree. It's like having a child. You don't know what to do, but you're going to grow in knowing how to take care of it.
The reason that I ask is that I feel like our communities just expect us to be always ready for marriage. And so when I see women who are afraid of it, I see myself in them.
Yeah. Sarah, I'm interested in knowing about what you think about the rural women. I mean, in the context of Africa, we can but only talk about rural women in this situation. They oftentimes look for security. But for the urban women, what does happiness mean? What does love mean for them, since they already have the education, they already have financial stability? In your view, what is happiness to them?
So I think for them, it's whatever empowers them, whatever makes them feel fully fulfilled. So in our world today, we think about security in financial terms. I think that if you have a man who's able to provide that for you, because that's the way the structure is set up, then that's security for you. If you are a woman who is quote unquote independent, you're financially independent, you're choosing your own career, that's security for you. But you might feel security is also having an emotionally intelligent partner. So I think that women should get to define it however they want and in the spaces that they're finding themselves. So rural women are finding themselves in a particular context, so they have to define it in a way that makes sense for them. And urban women are finding themselves in a particular context, and they have to define it for themselves, and we don't get to define it for them. They get to be empowered in that way.
So Sarah, I think for some women, happiness is being able to satisfy their families, because for a long time they've been under this pressure to get, they have their jobs, they have their security, they have finance, they have everything they've ever wanted, but they don't have a man. Even if they don't want a man, but the fact that their families, friends, everyone keeps telling you, get married, get married. Even if, that's why some people get married and they're not even in love. They'd rather be in that marriage and be unhappy, but know that, oh yes, I'm married. So for some women, that is actually happiness to them.
Right. And and I think that that's still though, they're living into a system where people are defining what happiness is for them, because they're saying this is what a woman does and this is what a man does.
Someone calls it the marriage trap.
Right. I mean, it's a system. There's a particular gender order, and marriage is fulfilling that gender order, because
and that's something that Ayane really doesn't like, because of the pressure that comes with one thing and then leading to the other, leading to the other.
But that's exactly the issue, and I think that's why there's so much tension around young women who do want to get married. Is that the pressure doesn't end when you get married. Once you get married, married, then they expect you to have a kid.
Yeah.
When you have your first kid, that's still not good enough. You need a second kid.
Yeah.
And then after that comes, is one of them a boy? If you don't have a boy, you need to give birth to. There's just always something that women have to aspire to. And that's why I feel like there's this tension of, well, like getting married isn't going to make me happy because that pressure is still going to be on my shoulders.
And this is why I understand why people think the institution is really for men.
Yes,
exactly.
I mean, it is for men because the thing is, we're still asking the question. We're still saying, why aren't women getting married? Why aren't men getting married? We're not asking that. No one's asking them. They're not getting pressure to be married. And then when they do get married, it's like there's permission for them to be hoes as well. You know, like so. It's always a question of what the woman is doing when the system is set up to benefit men. Why are we asking women these questions? Why are they the ones that have to sacrifice their happiness for some obligation because they've been told that in order to be happy, you must fulfill this obligation? Why isn't it that men are also getting those messages?
That's a great question. We've said before that the institution of marriage is changing. And to me, that makes complete sense because we as individuals are changing, societies are changing. For example, me compared to my mom, we're two completely different women. And my mom will say that about her and my grandma. It's just a generational shift that kind of happens. And so shouldn't marriage reflect that? Why do you think people are afraid of any change that comes with marriage?
That's a good point. And I think it's a legitimate concern, a legitimate question, because when I was thinking about getting married, I had my concept of what marriage was. But marriage is not a walk in the park. There's a lot of things that come with keeping it together. And I think that pressure, people have subconsciously the fear of what they will be able to perform in order to keep it successful and to keep it together. So the concerns that women have are very legitimate.
And my concern, Ariane, is that the pressure to make sure it's successful seems like it's only on women.
Yes, the burden definitely falls on women. And I do think that there is a sense of when you do get married, if you're an independent woman, you still have to perform some kind of femininity, and the man has to perform some sort of masculinity in order for this to be some sort of partnership that meets the standard of true marriage. So I do think that, like, of course, people are afraid because they're feeling, I'm going to lose myself, whatever that means, and I have to meet some standard for marriage, whatever that is.
Yeah, right. Let's take another quick break. When we come back, we will hear from a music icon in Kenya who learned from the mistake that he made in his marriage. Stay with us.
Welcome back. This is Our Voices. Earlier in the program, we talked about why some women in Africa are not actively seeking marriage or eager to settle down as they would in the past. Ladies, I guess happily ever after only exists in the fairy tales.
I guess so. Over a decade ago, one of the biggest scandals rocked the Kenyan entertainment industry. Eric Wainaina, a famous Kenyan music icon, learned a thing or two about love and marriage. His affair with Valerie Kimani, a contestant of Tusker Project fame, definitely broke many hearts. In September of last year, for the first time, he openly talked about it and shared what he hopes people can learn from it as well. We had a chance to talk to him while our team was recently in Nairobi. Let's hear his experience.
I made some mistakes, which sort of documented, and made it through that, and my wife stood by me, and we stayed together, and so Sheba, my wife, is my best friend, and has been for a long time. And my greatest regret was that I risked losing that most precious relationship that I have. I'm also grateful for the relationship that I have with my children, and for what this has also shown them, that a couple can go through a time of tumult and come out closer, you know. One of the things that we do at home is that we make sure that whenever there's conflict between me and my wife, that we're open about our conflict. You know, it's not very African to argue in front of the children, you know. But I think that showing the children that a couple can argue, but that they still love each other, is an important lesson. So we are very free, and I think that has been one wonderful thing that has come out of a very dark situation.
Yeah, so I thought it was really interesting what he said, and I'm really interested in hearing what his wife has to say.
Me too.
So what if she had been the one that had cheated? What would be the standard for
would have
her?
crucified her.
Exactly.
I think.
Because it's literally like they're celebrating him for doing something wrong. Like his family is closer, so doing the wrong thing made his family closer.
But we have to say he did say sorry, so I think it's going to encourage a lot of men to see that it's wrong.
But the wife is also being celebrated for staying, and you talk about how the institutions kind of support women one way or another. If you think about it, she had no choice but to stay. Because what would have happened to her if she left?
They're supporting her for performing femininity, which is when you stick by your man when he cheats on you. And we're supporting her for doing African femininity.
I really wish we had her on set so she can really give us her insight as a woman in that situation.
Yeah.
Who do you think deserves a shout out? Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices and tell us who you think is a woman to wash.
We leave you with these words from Nigerian-born award-winning writer, activist, lecturer, and self-proclaimed feminist, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She used her voice to say, "Because I am female, I am expected to aspire to marriage. I am expected to make my life choices, always keeping in mind that marriage is the most important. Now, marriage can be a source of joy and love and mutual support. But why do we teach girls to aspire to marriage and we don't teach boys the same?"
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you to our guest Sarah at the Yinka School of the University of Pennsylvania.
So good having you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Madina Maishano from the VOA House of Service. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Come again.
I definitely will.
On behalf of VOA, Our Voices, and my colleagues, I am Oreni Tangishaka. Many blessings. Good day.
Can we fly away together?